Welcome back to That Amazon Ads podcast. Today, we are joined by the wonderful, intelligent, incredible, ever so talented Elizabeth Greene, who probably needs no introduction as she's done a great job making a brand of her own with Jungler, an Amazon PPC agency. But Elizabeth, how are you doing? Feel free to give more people a little more information about yourself, maybe your origin story for those who don't know you.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. That is very high praise. I hope I can live up to the hype for everyone listening in. Yeah, so we run an Amazon ad agency. We focus on partnering with brands doing 1 to 5 million that are really looking to hit that scale trajectory, and they don't have someone internal who's able to drive the innovation on the ad front. Makes up about 50% of the business, roughly speaking, for most brands. And so it's a really important piece of the business to get right. And so that's where we come in.
That's awesome. And then Andrew, of course, you are here as well. How's the week going?
Going pretty good. Yeah, it's been a good week. I'm excited to have Elizabeth on here, and this is the first time meeting her. So excited to hear what she has to say. I know I've seen a ton of stuff. I've interacted with her LinkedIn stuff quite a bit, and just see all the awesome content she puts out. So excited to talk in person and get to hear a little bit more about your story and see where you came from, how you got into this space.
Yeah. Liz, you are a big producer. I'm a big fan. Always engaging with your content. Yeah. What do you think's been, Andrew and I, we have like a little competition going on where we see who can get like the most engagements or the most impressions. What's been your number one? Do you know what it is? Like your number one best performing post of all time?
I would have to go back and look. I think it's changed since then. Most of my best performing posts I find are the ones where I'm one of the first ones to put out a screenshot of an Amazon ad update. Those ones do pretty well. However, a little while ago, oh my goodness, it's kind of ridiculous. I've since pivoted a little bit to like, who is my ideal audience and trying to speak more to that, because I probably could get more engagement if I went super broad. And here's like your story on that. So I went and looked at my analytics and found that my highest performing post had a selfie in it.
Really?
Which I don't do that very much. Maybe I should. I probably should. I probably just clickbait it up. But no, so my best performing post, and I think this was when I checked it like 6 months ago, so I think it's changed. But I took a selfie with all of my children in the background. There's 6 of them, by the way. So I mean, it's pretty scroll stopping.
Yeah, big family.
The post content was literally, according to my analytics, selfies perform the best. So for your viewing pleasure, this is what after hours looks like around here. Best performing post. It's ridiculous.
Dang.
Interesting.
So
that probably took off because it's so authentic and it's just so real. Like people can relate to it a little bit more.
I've also seen Stephen Pope has been doing a lot of those lately, family pictures. His kids all over his like working desk workstation. So I don't have kids. Maybe I'll have to do something with my dog sometime. We'll see if dogs get good clickbait. But Elizabeth, we're here not to talk about LinkedIn posts. We're here to talk about Amazon ads. And you and I have already discussed a whole plethora of things. I'm sure we'll have to have you on probably for multiple episodes as there's such a wide range of topics to cover. But to kind of just open things up, the first thing that I think we wanted to ask you is just kind of taking a step back, looking, because how many years has it been that you said you've been doing this?
I keep saying it's going on 5 or 4. I really should go back and like actually look at when we launched.
Yeah. So we'll call it 5 years. Over those past 5 years, what would you say has been the number one most impactful either tactic or strategy or just concept principle to your PPC success? If you could kind of boil it down to one thing that's just kind of taken you this far, what would that be?
Yes, I would say understanding analytics by far, I find. And not just understanding analytics, because I think all of us can go into account. We're like, oh, these are the ACoS trends. Oh, this is total ACoS trends. Oh, these are my sales trends. It's not being able to read numbers. Analytics, or what you might call advanced analytics, would be understanding the context of the numbers that you're looking at, being able to tell the story based on that context and the trends. And then most importantly, being able to then relate that context and the trends back to an action item. That's the piece that most people struggle to figure out is, okay, I know my sales are doing this. I know my ACOS is going up. I know, I'm struggling with total ACOS, or I'm happy with total ACOS, but I don't see the sales trajectory that I'm looking for. So it's a lot of brands coming to us. They're like, look, we got all this stuff running. Like, we have our checklist, our teams, we're doing the thing, right? Like, we're constantly looking at search and reports, relaunching, and I'm doing all these things, or looking at my top keywords, or I've done some consults with like some very large brands, and they're like, hey, look, the data analytics dashboards are huge. Like, these people have the information, but what they're lacking is that piece that goes, okay, this is what's happening. What do I do about it? And if you have an advertiser who can figure out what's happening and can figure out what to do about it, that's what makes a rock star.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think it sounded like 3 steps there, right? It's like, number 1, just being able to read and interpret the analytics, and then 2, kind of tell a story behind it. Maybe that's part of the interpretation too. So first, it's just like, would you say step 1 is just being able to pull all the right metrics together? Yeah. Number 2, craft a story that actually explains what's going on, why. And number 3 is then turning those into action items. So that's great. That's a great way to put it. That's something that Andrew and I, with other account managers that we've worked with, we usually tell them, it's not good client reporting to just say, hey, week over week click-through rate increased by 10%, and just leave it at that. So we use the formula. We say X happened due to Y, and we have them fill that in. But we should probably add that third point of a Z that's like, so now we should Z, adding that action step. But yeah, really being able to think through that storytelling. So why don't you let's break those 3 things down and talk about those each individually, because I think it's a lot to unwrap there. So that first point of just being able to pull in those analytics, for you, where are the kind of top dashboards? I know we were already talking about some different dashboards before we hit record here, but what for you are kind of like the top most important places that you're going to pull in the numbers that you think are the most important for everything?
Yeah. So we have an analytics tool we've been working with for, it's been over a year now. Honestly, at this point, I could say I can't live without it. So that is pretty much our go-to right now.
Are you allowed to say the name of the tool?
Yeah. So it's called KPOQ, KAPOQ. I really like it. Honestly, I got one of a friend was like, oh, hey, we're using this tool. You should totally take a look at it. And they showed me the comparison dashboard. And I was literally like, I need that. This is everything that I've been trying to build internally.
Yeah. What's that comparison dashboard?
It essentially allows you to isolate 2 specific date ranges and compare every single metric you could possibly want. And then it actually sorts by product on depending on which product had the biggest impact on sales changes. So you're already kind of sorting by the North Star, and then you then can dig into the catalog of, okay, what changed? This one up, this one down, why? And then you essentially look at all the metrics. But the one that I find that I'm using the most these days is they have 2 separate sort of modules in there that we go to all the time. One of them is the comparison dashboard, which again is really good to isolate dates of change and then try and figure out what are the numbers that are impacting that. But they also have and I can't think of the name, but there's another dashboard in there that is essentially it's like an overtime, but the beauty of that is that it pulls in, of course, advertising metrics as well as total account metrics, and it gives you kind of in a graph, and then of course you can dissect it, like what's happening over the month or weekly. So if you want to aggregate numbers, if you have an account with maybe large performance swings. But what we've been using this dashboard for, because you can essentially overlay I think it's up to 4 different metrics. So you can see those on the graph and just identify changes. So we've been using this to identify, for instance, a sales changed, right? So how we actually start digging into the numbers, and like I said, taking it from what's happening, telling the story to action items, is identifying what is the largest root cause of a change is what we're really looking to do. And then our question is, okay, so given that this is the largest root cause, what action items can I take to correct for this, essentially? So what I like to do is look at the what's kind of the breakdown components that you can use to calculate the number that you're trying to determine why something changed. So for instance, sales. That's why I came up with what I call, again, we're talking about clickbaity, the Amazon growth formula, which is essentially, I would look at sales, right? So everyone looks at sales changes and goes, what happened to my sales? And I'm sure you all get that question from clients a lot. We get it. Everyone in the industry gets it. When there's changes around Prime Day and conversion rates drop, everyone's like, oh, what happened? Why did sales change? Or consequently, like if sales are accelerating, why? Like, how do I replicate that across other products? And so, I mean, like, we'll look at traffic, we'll look at other, and like, there's so many metrics you can be looking at. Like, how the heck do you know which one's the right one or where you should dig in? So I just like messing around with analytics. And so I was kind of just in one of those phases where you're just kind of like, oh, can I use this to calculate this? Or how does this relate to that? And I was like, oh, it's a function of traffic, conversion rates, and average order value, which when you were talking about numbers and what they tell us, so you can essentially calculate your sales by taking your sessions, multiplying it by your unit session percentage, and multiplying that times your average order value to calculate
that was actually
your sales.
Our very last episode it hasn't aired yet, but that was the topic of discussion. We were it was like how to grow your sales, and we say there's only 3 things that matter. It's just traffic, conversion rate, average sales price, unit sales price. So and that was actually, it was that topic that was, I think, the thing that first when you were saying that on LinkedIn, that was the first thing that caught my eye, because that's something that I've been thinking for years, and I don't see enough people talking about that.
Yeah.
And part of what we said on the last episode is that if you tell that to your average, PPC manager, they'll say, yeah, I know that. But they're not actually like executing on that, right? So they can maybe do that first step you're talking about of like pulling in those metrics, but they're not doing a good job of crafting the narrative around that between like, why did sales go up or down? Which metric was impacted? What impacted that metric? So like we could almost break down each of those 3 variables into like, sub KPIs for what's going to drive those. Before we hit record, we're talking about like click-through rate, which is going to drive traffic. We talk about conversion rate and everything that goes in there. So that KPOC dashboard is the most important. And then obviously I'm sure you use a lot of other tools. What within like the Amazon suite, like that's actually available to the average person? Because do you know the pricing of KPOC? I'm not sure if it's a percentage of ad spend or flat rate.
Yeah, it's more built for a full service solution. So we use it because I can't live without the analytics. But it has other solutions in there, like it tracks profit margin, which is super important to our clients. I also like that it has a lot of slice and dice features. So for instance, if I'm seeing an issue with all of a sudden the return rates going up exponentially, I can immediately go into the tool, isolate that product, look at all of the latest returns and the messages around those returns and the reason right within the tool. Or for instance, if you're trying to troubleshoot a conversion rate issue, it also tracks, I think, the rate of reviews or something. And it surfaces a lot of alerts in there. So for instance, one product has like an accelerated negative review count. We've used it in the past to like a certain product, we were dealing with issues in profitability, and we tracked that back to return rates. So then our low review count. So then the review count led us to inside the tool of the messages surfacing to say like, oh, we're getting used product. And then I was like, oh, let me go back and return rates. And I was like, wait, are you guys like putting used inventory back into circulation? They're like, oh yeah. I'm like, well, there's your, so it was like, but it was all within the one platform, which it's not like you can't pull out those insights inside of the Amazon platform. I mean, you would go in there and say, okay, conversion rate's down. Why? Okay, wait, I had bad reviews. Okay, let me go read the reviews. So you can figure out all of that information. I was just able to figure it out in 15 minutes versus like 3 hours.
Yeah, that's great. So would you recommend that tool to basically everybody, or is this more just for full agency, full house agency brands, or really large brands. And also, you don't have to like say the exact pricing, but I'm not sure if you would think it's relatively
so
pricey.
It is a more interplayed solution. I will say that. So it really does depend on what you as a brand, want to deal with. Like, I also would factor in, say, like the time cost effect. I say it's more of a full service agency solution. The reason being is it does way more than ads. Like I said, it's like analyzing reviews. It's got inventory forecasting in there. It's got, you can set up automations for like request reviews. Like there's a lot of tools and integrations within the platform. Like you can even initiate shipments from it, which again, we're not full service agency. We simply focus on the ads. So I don't use those solutions, but what I've found in the tool is just the analytics. Like I said, like that whole like workflow, we could build it and we could build, you can build your own dashboard through it with pulled reports, or I still like looking at business reports and I still like looking at the ad console. So most of these things I'm telling you, you can look at the business reports, you can look at the ad console and you can figure it out.
There's something that just feels natural about being in the business reports rather than being in like a third party tool that's like pulling in the same data.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you kind of brought up and throughout this whole discussion is like the main benefit to this tool is that it brings in both the ad side of things and the Seller Central, like inventory management, review management side of things. And those two pieces like really fit together quite closely, have a huge impact on one another. And so it sounds like this tool just kind of allows you to get that whole comprehensive, holistic view of the impact your ads are having on total versus things that are happening on a PDP level, influencing performance on your ads. And so just allowing you to compare and contrast the different performance at an ad level, at a total level is super good. And I love that view of being able to roll everything up at an individual product level and see the ad performance, total sales, all that type of stuff, and trend it out across a variety of things. I'm curious though, if this tool, does it allow for the creation of like custom metrics, or do you feel like it is pretty comprehensive with the metrics that it provides? Want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's quite comprehensive, and I do also like that they're very much in the continuous and rapid improvement stage. So there's a lot of things that we've requested that have either been implemented or we're seeing them on the horizon. We're pretty excited about that. As far as fully connecting things, so we do have solutions that we've built in-house that kind of give us information in a way that we would like to see it as well. As far as like different metrics not included in the tool or custom metrics, I think it's pretty much all there. Honestly, anything you could possibly want and then some is going to be, reported. The difference, I think, is how do you prefer to view the data? And there's a lot of pretty custom solutions they've implemented, like, for instance, the ability to kind of customize the data points you want to see because it is so robust. So to be able to condense that. I also like that they allow to kind of slice and dice on a per product level. So you can filter actually relatively quickly. So if you want to look at a graph and you isolated it to like a couple products that are making, kind of really driving those changes, you can quickly filter for those products and then have all the graphs and metrics be displayed just for that specific filtering of products. So I do find that solution very helpful. And they also have the ability to look at, like, say, a per parent ASIN level and then kind of track that back to the ads. The piece that we've found helpful as far as internal solutions has been really, really getting specific in tracking your overall account performance, then relating that back down to a per product performance. And when I say per product, I want to clarify, we typically look at individual listing performance or parent ASINs. Would be how we look at it. The reason being is we are managing quite a few very large and complex brands, a lot of them being clothing accounts or bedding or just the ones with like lots of different variations. In those cases, looking at a per child ASIN is less than helpful because there's thousands of them and the amount of you're driving traffic to a listing essentially. So that's what we've done, is we've rolled it up to that level. But what we find is the larger your account is, the more complex your ads get, the more that you're really looking to drive that scale. And you've just simply, like I said, been implementing best practices without this like analytics overlay piece. Oftentimes you are focusing on the wrong things, you're attributing ad spend to the wrong things, you're hyper optimizing the wrong things, and you're missing out on the biggest movers in the account. So what we've done is we've built an in-house solution that spits out a very customized report. This report has literally been my brainchild, and I've been adding and refining for the last probably 2 to 3 years. And so we use this report along with 2 other in-house reports. And essentially, so these are all internal tools, and we've since revamped our audit strategy to actually use these internal tools to like perform our account audits for prospects. But really what I find most people have issues with is going, okay, I know this is happening on the account level, and I see the metrics and I see what I don't like or what I do like, and I can understand how that works. And I can also kind of take a look at my ads and sort of see how those are feeding into the big picture. But where the breakdown happens, because like there's some okay solutions out there, I haven't honestly found like a really, really good solution that's fully automated, is okay, this is what's happening at a per product level, and I can kind of quantify how that feeds up to the overall account performance. But marrying the account level or the product level performance with what's actually happening in the ads and what I have built out in the ads on a per product level, and then further taking that into specific action items on very specific pieces of your ad account, it's really, really difficult, especially in very large accounts, to be able to just to connect those dots. And so what most people do is like, okay, I need to be implementing a bid solution. I need to be implementing, like my routine budget adjustments, placement percentages, like all of the things that I know I should do. And so they kind of just have these wheels spinning, and they're kind of just like trusting that that's going to roll up to the account level. And sometimes it does, and then sometimes it doesn't. But when it doesn't, they don't know how to connect the dots.
Yeah. So let me kind of take another step back here. So in the analytics dashboard, like you're everywhere, right? You're in KPOC, you're in the Amazon reports, you're looking at account level metrics, you're looking at campaigns and individual products. Why don't you like help the audience kind of figure out where their eyes, if they're limited on time, help them kind of narrow down their vision to like what are going to be like the top like 1, 2, 3 metrics that you think are most important to look at, and also break down like, are you looking at that at an account level or a product level? So it's kind of like maybe just like it's like one of your daily performance reviews or weekly performance reviews, or what do you do? What's kind of like your workflow there?
Yeah. So I would say definitely the main one you want to look at is sales. Let's be honest. Like, if I had to pick one thing to look at, I would look at sales. And then probably the next thing is I would look at profit. Now, the tricky thing about looking at profits, like I said, our tool does that. Like we look at profits, we're looking at net profits. How does that relate? The one thing
quick question. Quick question.
Go ahead.
When you say profit, just since there's a few definitions out there, are you doing, are you looking at like total sales just minus ad spend, or are you also factoring in the cost of goods sold and everything?
See, that's the thing, is we would factor in the cost of goods sold and all of that. Because the tool calculates all of that. Cool. Now, the one thing I do want to caution anyone listening who is only looking at their sales and they're looking at their profits, which again, profits should be total North Star. I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying be careful if you see a dip in profits and you immediately go to the ads as the reason for those dip in profits. So for instance, I had a Q&A with just an open Q&A session, and there was someone was saying, okay, I've recently had a dip in profits and I need to fix my ads. And so I had this conversation, and he knew his numbers, like he was totally on it. It was a really good conversation. But I was saying like, okay, like if you have a dip in profits and you need to get your total A cost down, just caution against looking at ads as the reason why your profits have dipped, because if you have a removal order, if all of a sudden your Amazon fees go up, like there's all of these other like additional fees in there. And if you're looking at your total profits and you're saying like you don't understand the different metrics that go into, or like if your cost of goods go up and you're like, oh no, my profit's down, I got to fix the ads. And you're like, okay, so you need to adjust the ads for your new profit metrics, but it's not that ads are broken. So like you need, again, context is super key. So he was saying like, oh yeah, actually my Amazon fees have increased, and so therefore that's why I have to bring this down. I was like, okay, like you still have to bring it down at the end of the day, but it's understanding that, well, it's not like essentially you were doing anything wrong before, where like sometimes if you don't have that context, what you end up doing is going, oh my gosh, ads are broken, we have to like just absolutely pummel ads. And it's like, well, no, sometimes like really hard pivots can be detrimental. So you just want to understand the context. Back to numbers to focus on. So I would say sales, just looking at like how is that impacting, where is it going, where are our trends there. We do kind of see that as sort of a North Star, but then coupling that with profitability, obviously, because you can infinitely grow sales and start going negative on profits, and that would not be good for the brand. So kind of keeping those two things in tandem. And so what we're looking to do is build out ads to support maybe top line growth and bottom line growth, depending on where the brand is focused. That's essentially what we look at. Now, when it comes to relating that back to the ads, because again, we are an ad agency, that's the one lever we pull. So even as much as like there's other numbers that impact total sales volume and growth, this is the one piece we got to work with. So we got to figure out how do you build that, right? And so how we've done this is actually we have a 3-level process that we look at. And like I said, this is something that we've also built into our audit. So it's essentially looking at the overall account growth trends. I'm going to look at it this week over week, also taking a little bit more closer of a look month over month. And essentially, I want to know 2 things. One, how are sales trending? Is it up or down? Looking at this on a year-over-year basis and a month-over-month basis. We added in year-over-year because if you go December to January, your month-over-month is going to look like garbage. So you want to roll that up. So you want to add the context there. Because sometimes you might be down month-over-month and people are like, oh, my sales are down month-over-month. I'm like, yeah, but you're actually up like 40% since last year. And if you look at the last year's numbers, you tend to go down in July. And actually we're not as down this July as we were last July. So contextually, we're actually doing phenomenal. So adding that, again, context to the numbers, adding that story piece. And then if the sales are trending in a specific way, we want to know why. And so then we'll look at it from, we're looking at, again, those numbers. So we're looking at sessions, we're looking at conversion rates, and we're looking at the average order value. Also looking contextually at, you can find in the business reports how many average parent ASINs there are in the business reports, which can give you context into, oh, look, we went from 24 parent ASINs down to 4. A whole bunch of stuff went out of stock or they discontinued, so we have less products on the market. And so that can add, again, another context piece to this. And then we're looking at that on an account level. There's a lot of other metrics to look at just to figure out why would happen. But what I want to know is what's happening on an account level, which can then give me context if I go down into the second piece, which is the per product level. So essentially our thesis is that accounts are built up of products, and products are what drive the overall account growth. So as much as you want to do, say, oh, my sales are this, my sales are that, if all you're doing is looking at the account level, you're missing sort of this middle piece of the puzzle. The other thing so why you need both of these pieces is because other brands will look at simply their product line and they'll say, okay, this product line is doing this product's doing line's doing this one's growing, this one's shrinking, and we're delegating resources. But what we've found is that if you're only looking at a per product level, again, where you're focusing, where you're choosing to spend your time may or may not be the right place to do that. Meaning you could be focusing on the wrong product line that's only driving, say, 2% of the total account sales. And at that point, your focus, well, it's not that we should ignore those products. It's just we're not going to get that 80-20 lift from focusing there. So you kind of want to look at both.
In a situation like that, like how often do you see that happening where somebody is like putting a lot of ad spend and effort and emphasis into a product that is, making up a very small percentage of their total revenue. Like, is that a common thing that you see? I feel like most people tend to kind of gravitate towards their best performers, but in what situations do you typically see that somebody's like over invested in a product? Like what types of contexts are around that? Is it usually like, hey, this is a product launch, or hey, this is a new product, or hey, the owner just thinks that this is going to be like the next big thing, like, and we're trying to prioritize it? What type of situations do you typically see that come up?
Yeah, you would actually be surprised. So part of this sort of count or like product level analysis, we have, like I said, there's 3 internal reports, custom reports that we put together that we use for the audit. We actually have 2 on the product level. So the first one is actually, let me go to the second one, because that will answer the question you're saying, is we look at the per product performance. And for this, like, my new absolute favorite thing is percentages of total. It gives you so much context. You can do this in your business reports today. You don't even have to marry it to your ads. Go into your business reports, download a report for maybe the last 30 days, take a look at the per product sales, and then say per product sales divided by sum of total. And that essentially will give you a percentage number for it. And it adds, like, in an instant, you'll have so much clarity because everyone knows their top sellers, right? Like, they're like, oh, this one's my top seller, and then this one does a little bit less. But how much less? Yeah. What is the actual number? So because when you're sorting, I do that all the time. You're sorting by the biggest number, right? I want to see what has the most impact. How big is that impact? Percentage of total sales will give you that. So that's what we're essentially looking at, is saying, okay, this is our best seller, but what is the percentage wise? There are some accounts where you'll see the top sellers doing like 40% of total sales. Larger catalogs, you might only be doing, say, 23% of total sales. You'll have those other accounts that one of the top products is doing 75% of the total sales. As go those products, goes the account. So you have to be super careful with what you're doing. But the other piece that we layer on, which again, will relate this back to the ads, is we'll calculate on a per product level what is the amount of spend. And then we'll then also look at the percentage of total ad spend. So by looking at these 2 numbers in tandem, we will see what is having the biggest impact on sales and then which product has the biggest impact on spend. And you can kind of relate those 2 numbers together. And this, again, will add clarity. So oftentimes, like, I've gone into accounts, I'm like, well, this product's doing 10% of your total sales and you're spending 23% of your total spend on this product. And all of a sudden the allocations, when put side by side, become significant. Now, you do want to relate that back to, we also look at ad efficiency as well. So ad efficiency, meaning we look at ACoS, total ACoS, and ad sale percentage are the 3 numbers that we look at. So it's essentially, what is the impact on total sales? What is the impact on total spend? And then what is my ad efficiencies on those larger pieces of ad spend? And then all of a sudden you have, these are the 3 products we need to work on because this is where the inefficiencies are. These are where we have highly efficient ad spend that is being underutilized. So you can immediately also see that we have this product is doing 15% of our total sales. We're spending 7% of our total ad spend, and our total ACoS, and ad sale percentage are highly efficient. We should begin reallocating resources from these maybe top spending products to the ones that are actually driving business growth. And you can, again, immediately see where those shifts need to happen.
Yeah. So what do you do with, let's say you're doing all that analysis, and so now we're kind of bringing things into like our action steps, right? So just to recap, you've done steps 1 and 2, where you've done your overall analytics, you found your most important KPIs, you then followed the breadcrumbs where sales or profitability decreased month over month. You're following those breadcrumbs to see, is this just a cyclical thing that's normal? Is there a deeper issue going on? And now you're trying to turn that into an action item. And you already gave us that one great example of a bit of a case study where the return rate spiked because they were putting used products into circulation. Can you think of like another perhaps case study? I think case studies are always really, really helpful. And I'm actually working with a client now that's in a similar situation. So this would actually be helpful for me, where one of their products is a very low percentage of spend and very low percentage of sales. Now, this product in particular used to be their number 1 several years ago, and it was just a killer product. And then unfortunately, a competitor filed a patent on the product, which destroyed everybody's. It basically wiped out the game and gave this guy a monopoly on the product. So then the client created a different product that doesn't violate the patent, and this product's now really struggling. And the A cost is already really high. Like, let's just say the target's 30, it's at 60, and it's really difficult to move on this product. I mean, is that something where like you don't see this account, so you can't really see what's going on, but maybe you could walk me through like what would be the steps you'd want to look at to try to, or kind of how do you make a decision around that? Is this something that you're thinking, okay, we're just going to have to invest at a loss and talk through the client and do some like more strategic consulting with the client around like determining an investment level for this product? Or I mean, like, how do you think through all of that, all of this data, all of this storytelling to put it into a final actionable step?
Yeah.
So and you don't even have to use the example I gave you. You can go.
No, I like it because I like specific examples, because I might be able to ask. We'll see if we can do it. Am I good enough to do this on the fly? Time will tell.
I'm sure you are.
So I would want to know why the last product was doing as well. So this would actually be helpful by looking at our second customer report on a per product level. So what we essentially do is we look at the month-to-date run rate versus last month versus last year. And by doing this on a when I say per product level, again, clarity, this is on a per listing level or per parent ASIN essentially. And this you could do using business reports, just like business report for last year, business report for this last month, business report for month to date to this month, and you allocate all of that.
Did you say run rate?
Yeah. So like month to date.
Gotcha.
So then what I would do is I would look at because again, we look at that because in business reports, you can get sessions, you can get unit session percentage, you can get the average order value. So essentially I would want to know versus the last product, why was it winning last year? Was it because the sessions were more than they were on this new product? Is it because the conversion rate was more than it is? And it could be all the above, but at least give me some context. What's the difference?
It sounded like competition, right? Like it was it was maybe lacking a competitor in the space or something, and then a new competitor came in and soaked up a lot of that market share that was potentially being allocated to this product.
A big part of it is the conversion rate. The account's their average conversion rate across paid, organic, everything on non-brand is like 20 to 30%. So extremely high. They have extremely strong products. In this product in particular, it's about 5%. And it used to be up at like 20%. I think part of it is that, they lost all their reviews. They used to have like 10,000 5-star reviews. And so the reviews obviously got reset. The other thing too is their product is a little bit bigger since having to get around that patent. So it does not fit in the space where it's supposed to fit as conveniently. So that's certainly an issue, but it's still a great product, but those conversions are certainly hurting. And I think also the competition, Andrew, like you said, a lot of the competition has come in and just really started undercutting prices. And unfortunately, that's kind of been a big thing, I think, for a lot of sellers. We've seen a lot of American brands had to kind of increase their prices because of inflation and, just in order to stay profitable. And at the same time, we saw a lot of infiltration of like overseas brands that just came in super cheap and started undercutting. So those are all obviously like difficult waters to navigate as well.
Yeah. No, it's not. So definitely what you're dealing with is conversion rate. And I'm a huge fan of, I think that the buzzword is called reasoning from first principles, but I think that confuses people and be like, how do you actually do that? So how I do it is go, what is the actual problem? And what am I trying to do? Not what are the solutions to it, but what am I trying to do? So the actual problem is the decrease in conversion rate, which means that we're less appealing to the market, which what we can do about it is maybe we can get better reviews. It sounds like, wiggle room on price points is very difficult, especially because you have to make money running a business. And then I'm assuming with the conversion rate, it means lower sales velocity, means rank is struggling as well. And it sounds like the cost per clicks are quite high, which if the conversion rate is low, that's translating into high A costs. And I'm assuming with the lower ranking, that also means that total A cost is high as well. And so it sounds like you're struggling because ad spend is high out of necessity, just because you have to push it up to be able to rank the product. But that creates like this unprofitable situation, and it seems like a catch-22. Yeah. Which there's unfortunately, there's a lot of sellers in that position right now, just due to market competition or everything. So then that's the problem. What we're trying to achieve is, where can we get more profitable on, again, I'm speaking from a strictly ads perspective because I don't change pricing or add coupons or things. So my question would be, are there any, and this would be something I would throw off to the seller, but is there anything we can do to increase conversion rates, which would be maybe coupons, or maybe split testing main images, or, make sure you're at least keeping up with the request to reviews, or maybe an insert, or, anything you could possibly do on there is going to help me on my end. But then my question is, so one, either we continue to hammer ads and we run at 60%, and depending on if that 60% ACoS is going to get us ranking whatsoever, we'll determine if that's a good long-term solution. Because if you want to balance out unprofitable ads, you need to have organic ranking. And if you can't get that organic ranking, it doesn't make any sense to do so. So then my question is, here's another thing that I've come to kind of think of is, ranking does not always necessarily mean sales. It sounds super cliche, but like sales equals sales. So essentially the question is not where can I get ranking, because that's a problem that a lot of sellers go to as the solution. That is one solution to a sales problem. It's not always the solution to the sales problem. So my question is, where can I drive more cost-effective sales? And if that's my actual problem, again, ranking could be a piece of that. We could find things that we could run on. But then my question is, are there specific search pages, campaign build-outs, targeting that we can run that is a more cost-effective sales solution? And this sometimes means pivoting to broader matches, categories, auto campaigns, all of the things that we've been conditioned to think are the things that are lesser campaigns, or because high ad spend, exact match, high bids are the holy grail, it seems. And they are when it comes to ranking. But if that's not the only, ranking is not the only solution to the problem, that means we should be having a broader perspective to the problem. So I would just say it might just be, hey, with the conversion rates and with the cost per clicks, we have to determine, one, is this even a good long-term strategy? Because are we seeing the ranking benefits of what we're doing? And then two, are we okay with maybe running a little bit lower on the sales velocity and seeing if we can kind of take this broader approach? And most times it's an and, it's not always an either or. It's almost like, to what extent, not which should we choose.
Yeah. I wish there was an easier, faster way, but there's clearly 15, 20 different thought holes, rabbit hole trails, whatever you want to call them, thought trails that we need to go down and think through, and all these different variables that impact spend. Andrew, where's your mind at on all of this?
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the main thing we're pulling out of this is that context is key, and knowing what to look at to tie what's happening to telling that story, to then extracting out what are we going to do about it. That's a huge framework and process that we use every single day. And the way you're breaking down how you're looking at different things and tying this relationship of this metric to this metric, and just trying to look at all the different possible scenarios and solutions and things that could maybe point us in the right direction and show us maybe directionally which way we need to kind of pivot or make changes, or maybe we don't need to do anything at all and we just need to continue to gather data, and just having that mindset of how you're approaching interpreting data, pulling out insights and then how you're going to move forward from there is a very foundational principle. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. That's most of what I got from this episode. It's been super insightful, and we've been super stoked to have you on here. I think we're going to wrap up here, but we have one final question. Just one thing for our guests. What would you say are some of the intangible qualities that you see in strong PPC managers? What are some of the things that, soft skills that people have that you can see from, somebody just starting out in PPC, they're going to be like a strong performer and do really well at their work?
Yeah, I would say continuous curiosity and strong communication skills.
Love that.
I used to think it was only the hard PPC knowledge, but what I'm finding is that the communication piece is a huge piece of it. It's a very big. I would, as much as I've been talking about analytics and like these things are super important, like my team can learn those things from me. The benefit for anyone watching who thinks like, oh shoot, I'm not that great at communication. It is a skill and it can be learned. I am proof of that. I used to have crippling social anxiety. I did not speak when I was growing up. I was the shy, quiet weirdo.
It's hard to believe.
You wouldn't believe it. Communication can be learned. It is like anything else. So soft skills are soft because it's hard to quantify them. But they are still skills at the end of the day.
And then you also said curiosity too. How does that layer in? We say that all the time. Like people who are learning all the time is always a good tell of somebody who's going to do well.
Yes. So continuous learning essentially. And why I say that is because a lot of the things that I talk of now are the ways that I view things now were not ways that I viewed them in the beginning. And in the beginning, we all think we're right, and we are to some extent. But if you're not curious and you don't continuously, if you're not afraid to challenge ideas and your way in which you look at things, you're never going to find a better solution. You're never going to find anything better than what you have now. And I think, continuously improving and getting better is, kind of like one of the points to life.
That's awesome. Great. It's not just an Amazon ads lesson. It's a life lesson.
There you go.
Yeah. So constantly be challenging your own assumptions. That's a really big key takeaway. We can stamp that, give that the stamp of approval here. But if that's all we have today, this has been a fantastic episode, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and sharing your knowledge with all of us. It's been super impactful and insightful. And so without further ado, I think we're going to wrap up here. So Stephen, anything else? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, let everyone know where to find you. Best way to get in touch. Where would that be?
Yeah, no, for sure.
I know you're active on LinkedIn. Yeah, where's the best spot? Yeah,
so most active on LinkedIn for sure. Feel free to check me out there. But yeah, if you're interested in checking us out, definitely the best place would be the website, which is jungler.com. Form at the bottom or calendar link, that would be the best way. Set up a call. We go again. Whole audit process starts with goals. That's not one thing we talked about today, but definitely everything you're doing, these action plans, the strategy, the context, it all stems from like, what are you actually trying to achieve? So that's what we figure out on the first call, and then everything flows from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah. So jungler.com, we will link it in the description to this video. So, or in our podcast show notes as well. You also have a podcast yourself, right? Remind me, is just the Jungler podcast or?
Quasi. So I want to make that more official. I just haven't figured out how to tie it back. I haven't wrapped my brain around what I actually want it to look like.
Well, we will link to your YouTube channel and link to Jungler and link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope you found this valuable. And as always, we will see you guys next time.